want to welcome everybody back to the Mission 43 podcast. I want to start off by thanking our podcast sponsor, Spy Optics Standard Issue. They've been a tremendous asset to us here at Mission 43. And if you have not worn Spy Optics sunglasses, you're missing out. The optical clarity is amazing. I've worn lots of different types of sunglasses, mostly from other brands that most military guys have worn throughout their military careers. And I know what good sunglasses are, and Spy Optics is killing it with their standard issue line. So we greatly appreciate our partnership with them, and it makes this podcast all possible. So thanks very much, and check out Spy Optics Standard Issue. Today we have a special guest, a personal friend of mine. We chewed on some dirt together in Afghanistan just about 10 years ago, and having watched this gentleman grow into a leader in his own right, both in academia as well as now in his capacities as the CEO and president of an amazing nonprofit organization, Project Recover. I'd like to welcome my good friend, Derek Cosmo, as I knew you in the Marine Corps, your call sign, Derek Cosmo Abbey. Welcome to the Mission 43 podcast. Welcome to Boise, Idaho. I know that you're recently off of a recovery mission in Palau, so temperatures are probably a little different in Palau, probably about 90 and humid as could be, very tropical, only to come here to Boise, Idaho 3 days later, where this morning I think the morning temperature was 24 degrees probably when you got up. So
yeah, it's a crisp temperature, that's for sure. It's helping me with my jet lag, keeping me awake. But it feels great. It feels great. It's definitely different than Palau. Awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to work with Mission 43 and be a part of this podcast. I appreciate that.
Welcome to the promised land, bro.
Thank you. I love it up here.
Yeah, we had a great session with you. You were our guest presenter today as a thought leader with our Mission 43 Leaders Fellowship. So you and your lovely wife, Michelle, filled our heads full of great knowledge, and we appreciate that so much. But this session is all about your work, your vital, important work of living America's promise to our military service members that we will never leave anyone behind. And that's what you do in your capacity with Project Recover every day. So we can't wait to learn more about Project Recover, your work there, and the direction you plan on taking that organization in the future. But let's start with a little bit of your background.
All right.
So I know you didn't grow up too far from here. You're a Washingtonian, so not far from Idaho, but not nearly as cool as Idaho, but a decent state. All right, we'll leave it at that. So you grew up in Washington, and at a young age decided to join the military. So grew up in Seattle, all around Seattle, raised by a single mom that didn't graduate high school. And when I was 13, my mom passed away unexpectedly. So I was kind of on my own, got sent to live with my aunt and uncle. They did the best they could for a while. By the time I was 17, I was out trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And honestly, I ran away to the Marine Corps. But it was exactly what I needed at the time. I needed a system of structure for 18-year-old adrift without a sail or a rudder, and the Marine Corps definitely provided for that. And I needed a system that I could succeed in. And the Marine Corps was very structured. You run this fast, you do it this fast, you do what you're told. You're probably going to do all right. And I succeeded in the Marine Corps, found what I needed in stability and a system I could succeed in. And I got a lot out of the Marine Corps. They certainly got a lot out of me. And it was exactly what I needed at the time. So you and Dan shared that experience enlisting in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
You obviously excelled in that capacity. Dan obviously failed miserably during his time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I always say, or my buddies, I should say, I couldn't hack it as an enlisted Marine, so I became a Green Beret instead. Something a little easier, more calm, less training.
Yeah, it didn't take much to get there. So, all right, so you're a young enlisted guy in the Marine Corps. And then you had the unique opportunity of going the MECEP route.
Yeah.
Right?
So successful first tour in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps saw something in me and decided to invest in me, and they sent me into a commissioning program called MECEP, and sent me to Oregon State University to get an undergraduate degree.
Go Beavers,
Go
right?
Beavs, yeah. It's very nice to be back in the Northwest, closer to some amazing schools like, the Harvard of the Northwest. I'm pretty sure that's what it's
Yeah,
referred
yeah.
to as. That's what I refer to it as.
Yeah, Oregon State.
It might just be me. But no, actually, an amazing college town. I got a lot out of my education there, and I owe a lot to Oregon State. I loved it. And it's actually great to be back in the Northwest, closer to home and college. But yeah, they sent me to get my degree. I got a couple degrees in history, was commissioned a ground officer, and that was my plan. I figured, I'm going to get my commission, I'll have a platoon crunchies and do what Marines do as a platoon commander. And then all Marines have to go to the basic school for 6 months to learn, basic infantry tactics and how to be a small unit leader. And while I was there, I was selected for an aviation contract. Actually had
one of the coveted few.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a plan for me, and believe it or not, this drives my aviation friends nuts. I said I didn't want that, and the Marine Corps had other plans. I said, this is what we want, and their vote, carried more weight. So I got sent to flight school, and if I was going to go to flight school, I wanted F-18s, and that's what I got. Did well in flight school. I think I honestly did well because I just didn't care. If I failed out, I'm like, hey, there's 75% of the jobs the Marine Corps would be happy to do. So I didn't have the added pressure of this being my life stream and all that stuff. But I did perform and was selected for F-18s. Ended up West Coast Hornets and was F-18 Wizzo, so backseater in the F-18, and did everything you possibly want to do in an F-18 except for an actual air-to-air engagement. Right when I joined the squadron, actually they fast-tracked me through the F-18 replacement group and put me in my squadron early because they knew they were deploying. So I joined the squadron, deployed, and deployed right into a combat zone as a fresh nugget aviator.
So that was Iraq.
Yeah, so it was actually still Southern Watch. We knew things were going. That's why it was pending, and so fast track through the RAG, joined the squadron, deployed, flying out of Kuwait, started doing Operation Southern Watch missions over Kuwait, and was literally over Iraq when the war kicked off. And it's kind of a funny story because me and a colleague were flying above Basra, just doing a reconnaissance mission, and I'm kind of looking out the cockpit and like, man, that cloud looks a little bit funny, and so does that one, and so does that one. And then it realized, like, oh, those aren't clouds, those are AAA blowing up around the jet. And they're like, man, these guys are angry. What are they so angry about? And made our way back to base after the mission, and we're like, yeah, they're shooting quite a bit, more than usual up there. And they're like, the war kicked off, and we're kind of like, we have radios, you know how to communicate with us. It seems like that would be something important that you would tell us.
Yeah, I'm glad the Marine Corps standard of communication is up to snuff, because what could go wrong if you have aviators in the air over an active war that aren't aware of it? That's good.
Yeah, well, we managed, and so, and then it just went from there, man. And I was really privileged, I think, to be part of that invasion, and also part of Fallujah 2. I got to witness twice, watch the Marines be Marines and them just take the leash off and say, do what Marines do. And they did it, and they did it really, really well, and it was a privilege to be a part of that. So did a few deployments to Iraq in the F-18. And then
so that song "Bombs Over Baghdad," that was like you delivering bombs over Baghdad.
At times, yeah,
that's right.
Baghdad and other places.
Yeah, cool, man.
And that song was pretty popular back then,
yeah,
actually.
Absolutely.
So it made a lot of sense.
I think every video that showed bombs dropping had that song in the background. So when I hear that song, I think of you.
Yeah.
So.
The bread and butter of Marine aviation in my world is close air support. So it was really amazing to be working with not only Marines, but soldiers, sailors, and airmen on the ground in dire situations needing support, and provide those services for them is one of the highlights of my career, really.
So when I was introduced to a new air officer that was going to be checking into 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, it came via the 2-star general. So I get this email, it gets sent to me and the battalion commander at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Shuley. And then Shuley walks into my office, I was the OPSO at the time, and he's like, did you see this bullshit? The general just told us we're getting this F-18 Wizzo that has been volunteering for this nonprofit, searching for, locating, and recovering missing in action from World War II in the Southern Pacific. So there was this big write-up, this article that was released, had your face on it, and you're going to come in and be the new air officer in one of the companies.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good first impression or not when the general's letting you know that somebody's coming to your unit.
Yeah, we were not really thrilled about all the attention you were getting, and the general was tracking. Yeah. So you were like on, close-nal, had a relationship with the 2-star, and so he wanted to track your progress. So obviously, I, knowing that, had to steal you and put you in my company, and surround yourself with talented people, right? So. You came on board with MSOC Delta, so the mighty Task Force 814.
The first MSOC Delta.
That's right, the first one, and we were privileged to have you because you came with so much knowledge, so many skills as we tried to build this cadre of joint terminal, attack controllers, these JTACs, that would control aviators and aircraft overhead, providing close air support, and you had lived that world in that cockpit. And we're able to train them. You were an instructor at JTAC-I, and you brought with you so much knowledge that was void in my world as that ground pounder. I knew how to call those missions, but I had nowhere near the amount of knowledge and experience that you brought to the table in educating those Marines. And watching you in that process, I really learned the depth and breadth of who you are and your commitment to those Marine special operators. So it was a pleasure just in the beginning, going through training, working up with you, watching you do your thing, and watching the rapport that you at the time, a captain in the Marine Corps, from the aviation world, which is super different than the ground world or the special operations world, and how you interacted with those Marines and just wove yourself into the fabric of that unit was masterful. So you were artful in the execution of leadership in your tasks there, and it was just a lot of fun, man.
Thank you. It was absolutely a lot of fun, and I had aspirations and dreams of serving in Marine reconnaissance as a young Marine, and even when I was going through the basic school, we had a mutual friend, Jeremy Graysick, and I were in the same squad when we were in the basic school, and we actually would joke around with each other, say, well, we'll meet up in recon out in the fleet, and then I got aviation, so that seemed like it might spoil those plans. The funny thing is Jeremy, of course, made it to Force Reconnaissance, and then he actually left right before I checked in, and MARSOC was created. And so, the Marine Special Operations community and the aviation side of things are very different, but then there's also many similarities, and that's what I used to really point out is I had the luxury of serving in fighter squadron and serving in the special operations community. I'm kind of that guy that, if you see him drunk at a bar, you think he's full of baloney and making up stories. But it was a fairy tale, and I compared, the ready room of fighter squadron very much to the team room of a special operations unit. All type A guys, overachieving, having amazing impacts on the battle space, but also just phenomenal human beings. And so it was a privilege to be a part of both of those communities. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by phenomenal people, not only in my career, but since I've left it as well. But yeah,
Eric, I just want to point out, man, like your whole career, like you're saying, a fairy tale. Like you are a recruiting poster, like in a lot of ways.
Not tall enough.
Well, besides that, if they tone the camera down, but not many people make the transition successfully between enlisted to officer. And within that, you did the MESEP program, which is like the golden nugget that actually pays dude time in service to go get a 4-year degree while you're still like a E6 or whatever. I don't know where you were at the time.
Yeah, E6 was one of them.
Then you get out, then you become a Hornet driver, which everyone wants to be like a fighter pilot. Yeah. You did that. And then somehow as an officer, because it's pretty common for or uncommon for those that are listening may not know, for officers to be JTACs at all, or Joint Terminal Air Controllers, let alone SOTAC, Special Operations Terminal Air Controllers, JTAC-Is, the instructors that create that. You somehow did all of that while still being a Marine Corps officer, and the path that you took is remarkable.
Thank you.
And you're right. If I met you in a bar, I would say you're full of shit.
Yeah,
yeah, no doubt. So during that time together, you were volunteering for Project Recover. And you had done that for a long period of time. So when you had free time, you would sneak away in between deployments or between our lengthy training sessions in workups for a deployment, you would disappear for a week or two and go off in volunteer work for Project Recover, which at the time was bent prop, right?
Yeah, it was called the Bent Prop Project at the time, and yeah, for years, that's what I spent my leave time on when we had leave and not going on a deployment or coming back from a deployment. We had little spaces in there, and it was an interesting connection that happened in 2003. Just came back from a deployment, that initial deployment that I mentioned, and I happened to be in the ready room of my squadron, which was VMFA 121 at the time, and we got a call in the ready room, and the duty officer kind of is answering like, I don't know, hold on, and they give me the phone. Hey, Cosmo, you talk to this guy, and it turns out I was a history officer for the squadron.
Historian.
Yeah, supposedly. Maybe because I studied history, or maybe because I was just a lieutenant. And so I get on the phone, and it's this guy. His name was George Birianic at the time. He was a World War II veteran, and he was calling the squadron because he wanted information on any veterans' contact information. And I'm like, man, unfortunately, we don't have any of that. But what are you doing, and why are you doing it? Why do you need this? And he said, well, we're doing a reunion. Every year we get together as a squadron, World War II guys, and we have a reunion in different places. This year we're in Indiana. And I'm like, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can I come? And he's like, yeah, come on out. So me and another guy took a jet out. We meet with all these World War II cadre, and we're like, man, tell us about Corsairs and flying in World War II. And they're like, nobody cares about that. Tell us about Hornets in Iraq. And we're like, nobody cares about that. And it was just a really cool moment. And while I was there, they said, you have to meet this guy, Pat Scannon. Pat Scannon's been going to Palau and searching for Americans missing in action for a while, and he gives us updates every year. And it turns out he was coming to Indiana, but we had to get out of town. So we missed each other by 20 minutes. But I made this connection with the squadron, the old squadron, and I told him, next year you should come out to San Diego, and we'll have the reunion there. You can meet the new squadron. This will be great. And so they came out, and Pat actually came that year, and him and I met, became friends. I was admiring the work that he was doing. After
he was the founder.
He was the founder of Bent Prop Project. Yeah,
okay.
He just started it on his own, then started gathering a group together, searching for Americans that were lost in Palau. And so him and I became friends. He invited me to be in the group. And the reason he was coming to the 121 reunions was 121 flew out of Palau during World War II, which is an island in Palau. An amphibious landing had taken place there by the Marines and soldiers. And what a lot of people don't know is Palau in World War II had the third most losses behind Okinawa and Iwo Jima.
Oh,
but kind of hindsight being 2020, a lot of people think that the efforts that we did there weren't worth it. But all those that fought there and were lost there did so just as valiantly as anybody else. And so there were 9 major air campaigns. There was an amphibious landing, and hundreds of people still missing from Palau. And so he was just doing this on his own, and he invited me to be in the group. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Whatever you need. You need me to carry packs. I don't know what I can do, but let's figure this out. And took me a while actually to go on a mission because I kept on deploying. At the time, as you know, it was a little bit busy back then. But I came back from one of my deployments, unpacked my sea bag, packed my bag, and flew to Palau on a mission. And we were doing a jungle mission on my first time over there. It was actually both jungle and water work. But the first MIA I was a part of locating was actually a member of my squadron.
Oh, no way.
So I'm from 121 Marine.
Yeah.
And so I still get chills actually thinking about it. And after that, I was 100% committed. I'm like, I'm just going to do whatever I can. And that's how it started. And I just, when you got the letter from the general, it was just one of those missions we had just come back from and had found a Marine, and that's good news in the Marine Corps. And Pat's really good at recognizing the work of people in the team, and so he had kind of let the Marine Corps know the work that I was doing, and then it made its way down to
it
the
blew
lowest
up. Yeah, landed right on my desk. It was great.
And so, and that was the start of it, and I've been involved ever since, and primarily as a volunteer. And then as we grew and had more and more success, we built out our board of directors. I was an original board member of the board. And then after I exited the Marine Corps, finished some education and some other jobs, they invited me to be the president and CEO. The second president after Pat, and then the first CEO.
So that's your current position today.
My full-time job, yes.
Yeah, full-time job. And so just recently, as we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, you were in Palau just 3 days ago. What was that mission about?
Yeah, so this was a land-based mission again. We were actually documenting a few sites that we already located. Actually 3 Marine aviators, 3 separate sites, all Corsair sites. We were documenting them as much detail as we can to turn that information over to the official DoD organization, which is Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, DPAA, and trying to encourage them to execute recovery missions. And then we are also doing additional research because there were a number of POWs that were captured in Palau that included aviators, and as well as some Jesuit priests, and then some UDT members. And in the history of UDT and the SEALs, there's only 3 that haven't been recovered, and they were actually captured in Yap and then transported to Palau. All of those POWs were ultimately executed, and so we're doing what we can to locate those internment sites and then recover those remains and hopefully recover them back to, repatriate them back to the U.S.
And did you have funding for that mission?
Yeah, well, we have our regular funding that we get from some significant philanthropy, but we were also supported on this mission from the Navy SEAL Museum. So they have a legacy program, and that's through their museum in Florida, and they stepped up and supported us on this mission. So that we're very, very thankful for the support that they provided, and hopefully we can bring some answers to those questions.
Okay, so you started as the Bent Prop Project, and that was your early volunteer times. Mm-hmm. And then with the additional resourcing and partnerships, it became Project Recover. So who did you guys bolt on as partners, and what do they bring to the organization to make it more effective and efficient in what you're doing? So
we started in Palau, and it was just kind of a good old boys club, if you will. We were very intentional about who we brought in, that they brought some value, at least they were committed. But it was 100% volunteer, 100% self-funded. We do usually 1 mission a year, and we'd circle up and be like, you owe this much, you owe this much, you owe this much. All right, put it in the pile, and this is how we're gonna do it. We were doing jungle work, we were doing water work, which included, basic scuba and stuff like that. We got our hands on a towed side scan sonar so we could map a little bit, but we weren't the best at that quite yet. And then, as we were there, we started having success and more success. And then by chance, one year in Palau, we ran into some representatives from Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the University of Delaware. And they were doing some oceanography work in Palau. And they were kind of like, what are you guys doing? That sounds amazing. And we were like, what are you guys doing? And they had these automated underwater vehicles. And they were like, we could probably help with some of that stuff. Yeah, and so they gave us some of the services of their automated underwater vehicles, which allowed us to map the ocean floor or the lagoons around Palau a lot more efficiently than getting online and scuba. And so that became a success. They became vested in the work that we were doing, and that partnership became Project Recover. Okay. And that led to additional success and additional visibility, and it continued to grow. And then a significant funder from Dan Freakin Group came in and made some significant donations to our work, which has allowed us to expand outside of Palau. So now we have been in 17 nations across the world. We're not just focused only on Palau. We do a lot of underwater work because of our connection to UDEL and Scripps, but it's just expanded our capabilities and growth, and now we have a worldwide footprint instead of just
you're
Palau.
A global organization now.
Global organization now, and it just continues to grow. I mean, we just went to 2 new countries a couple months ago, so we had a multi-country mission to Croatia, Portugal, and Italy. It was our first time in Portugal and Croatia. We've had some success there. We're going to continue that. We've built out a database that includes hundreds potential mission and thousands of MIAs associated with those missions, which is something that other people don't know. So we brought in a full-time historian to start documenting and building out this database, and it's just led to some significant success.
So to put this in perspective for our listeners, what's the number of missing in action that you all are working towards recovering and repatriating back to our country?
Yeah, most people don't realize how many people are still missing from our previous wars, and the number is about 82,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
82,000?
82,000. That's
That's a lot of
72,000.
work.
Yeah, 72,000 from World War II, about 7,000 from Korea, about 1,600, less than 1,600 now from Vietnam. The government, DOD, has been doing a lot of work in Vietnam area and the country surrounding that. And so we have some potential stuff in Vietnam that we're looking at, but most of our work has been outside of that just because of all the work that's been going on there and the numbers that are in other places. 82,000 is a big number. There's tens of thousands of that number that we might not ever be able to recover just because of the circumstances of their losses. Deep water, pretty significant losses and things like that. However, technology keeps on advancing rapidly, and things that we're doing today we couldn't do 5 years ago, and 5 years ago we couldn't fathom the things that we're doing today. And so what happens 5 years from now, who knows? We're just going to keep on doing what we're doing. There's record depth recovery occurring now in the water missions that didn't happen 5 years ago, and who knows what that's going to be in the future.
Are most of your partners or employees, are they veterans?
So over half of them are. So over half of them are veteran, active duty folks doing like what I did, on leave and support mission, or first responders. So that community really understands the mission, and it's a really interesting impact. I just did a little blog post about this for Veterans Day on the impact that our work has on multiple people, to include veterans. And you mentioned it earlier, Brian, with keeping our nation's promise. That's kind of become our tagline, keeping America's promise. We make a promise to our servicemen and women that if you fall in battle, we'll do everything that we can to bring you home. Now, that promise tends to lie on the shoulders of our service members, right? So they're the ones that are, you keep the promise. Our nation makes it, you keep it. And so, unfortunately, it doesn't happen. And probably never the fault of our service members. They're going to do what they can to bring our fellow brothers and sisters that fall in battle home. But sometimes the circumstances didn't allow that. And so they bear the burden of that. And I can think of many times when I was younger in the Marine Corps, and you go to a ball or you go to an event and they'd have the POW MIA table and they talk about that loss. And in my head, I thought, I'll say a prayer, but what can you do? It just seems untouchable. And never fathoming that I'd be in the situation that I'm in today and having an impact on that. Yeah. And so, most people, they just kind of do the intangible piece, like, wear a shirt that has the POW MIA flag on it, or we'll set up the table. But the truth is people can have an impact on that. And it's just a matter of, figuring out the way that you can. It could be being a member of our organization. And when I started, I never thought I'd have the impact that we have had, and I'd be a part of that. And but it's possible, and it's not just possible in these areas. So today, when I hear that those events or that prayer for those POW or MIAs, or I see that table or I see that flag, it's a different thought in my head. Right. My thought is, well, we're just going to keep on coming after you. We're going to get you home.
Yeah, which is interesting because like a lot of the guys like you, all your deployments are in the GWAT, and we don't have that collective consciousness as GWAT veterans. Yeah. Like when I see the POW and MIA flag, I think of the Vietnam generation and generations past. But now you guys are the ones that are actually tangibly doing something, like you said, to make a difference in this ridiculous problem. And thankfully, GWAT veterans don't have the same rate of MIAs that they were in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. But even in the short-lived, like Dust One situations, like we turned up countries upside down, Afghanistan, Iraq, to find and recover those guys or the remains. And it's just unbelievable to me. Here at the Idaho State Veterans Cemetery, I take my sons there every once in a while to give like some gravity, you know,
Yeah.
to their young lives. And we were walking through there, and there's a veteran's spouse buried there, and on her tombstone it says, you know, widow of this missing in action soldier from the Pacific Theater. So she died, right? And never knowing the remains of her husband, never seeing her husband again, and having no one recover his remains, and have no idea still, you know, whatever. And that just blew my mind, because my son is like, you know, like, well, how come she's buried here, you know, whatever, and like, how come it has her husband's information with her, and why was he missing, you know what I mean? And I don't really have I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because it's true. Like my dad's dad fought in Palau.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so like hearing the proximity and all this stuff, it's interesting to me to think about growing up in a family where one of your loved ones is gone and there are zero answers.
It's kind of like folklore at that point. Like we're a few generations down the line now.
That's perfect. That's a perfect way to explain it. And, you know, sometimes we get people that are like, well, you know, it's been 7 decades since they went missing.
Right.
Does anybody care? And one of the most amazing things, which is even higher than that first discovery of an MIA, is interacting with the families once that person is returned home. And it's healing across generations. And we've actually done some research around the grieving process and how it's interrupted, and then it goes on to the next generation and generation. Last year I was in Pennsylvania for a memorial of a sailor that was returned home that we located, and folklore. And every every Gold Star MIA family that we interact with, that they have stories that they've made up about the person. Most of the time not quite accurate. There's always a shrine of some sort in the house. There's always this hope of, well, maybe they survived, and you know, the kind of like they have amnesia and they were living another life and something like that.
Yeah.
But we've even seen families that have been divided based on the stories that they've made up. And then the MIA is returned home and they know the truth now. And so that situation in Pennsylvania, and now I've seen multiple times repeated over and over again, is it has this unreal healing impact on the community that includes that family. And the family comes together from everywhere to not only memorialize but celebrate this person. And sometimes they're meeting each other for the first time. It has this impact not only on the family but the surrounding community. And then even like there was one woman, I was having dinner with her at her relative's memorial, and she lived in Las Vegas. We were in Ohio, and she's like, the teller at my grocery store was asking me about this, and we had this whole conversation and connection over this, and it's this ripple effect that happens literally across the nation. So now when you talk about legacy, you have this service member that sacrificed everything in World War II and had an impact in fighting tyranny and, you know, saving our nation and many, many others.
The world.
Well, yeah. And
right.
now it's having another impact 70 years later in this healing, which our nation needs right now. We need a way to cross boundaries, and it's not political, it's not partisan. All it is healing and good. And, you know, we see that, and that's the reason we do everything. It's having a positive impact and a healing impact or closure or whatever you want to call it for these families. And we're just going to keep on doing it because it's good for everybody involved, and even those that are not involved, it has a positive impact on.
Yeah, I remember you and I recently spent some time together at the George W. Bush Institute in one of their leadership programs. And in your presentation during that program, I distinctly remember a picture you put up from the presentation, and it was an elderly woman receiving the flag from Project Recover, closing the chapter, but the joy on her face receiving that, and you could sense the amount of closure she and her family members surrounding her were feeling in this moment, where they had closure to end this chapter of mystery, and they could move on understanding what happened. And I'll never forget that picture, because that's the promise we owe, and you delivered, and you brought joy to a family and closure to a family that would have gone on for more generations of mystery. and not knowing what happened to that service member.
You mentioned the flag, and I remember that specifically. It was Sister Joe in St. Joe's, Michigan, that flag was presented. She was a sister, meaning she was a nun, and she was also the sister of the MIA.
Oh, wow.
So she was receiving the flag from her brother. And the flag that we present, every time we find an MIA site, we fold an American flag for every MIA associated with that site. And then we hold on to that flag until the MIA is repatriated. And we don't let the families know that we have it. We just hold it, and it's in safekeeping until the appropriate time. And then when it comes time for the delivery, we get in touch with them and we let them know, hey, this is yours. We'll deliver it any way you want. If you don't want to see us, that's fine, because you don't owe us anything. But this flag is yours. We can mail it to you. And every once in a while we get a funny reaction, because they're kind of like, well, who are you guys? And are you going to ask us for money? Or this doesn't seem right. Everybody's a little bit skeptical.
Sure.
And so we have had families initially kind of like, kind of keep an arm's distance, and that's fine. And then once they realize we're not asking for money from them or anything like that, usually they warm up pretty quickly. And we've been very privileged to be very included and involved in a lot of these memorials and celebrations. So we get to go spend the time with the family. It's not about us at all, but we do get to bear witness to this occurrence, and then that also allows us the opportunity to deliver that memento to them on behalf of our organization, but obviously on the behalf of their loved one.
So what's the vision for the future? Where are you taking this organization?
Yeah, so we're just going to keep on doing work. So we're going to keep on expanding, and I wish I could tell you I knew where we're going to be in 5 years from now. I probably know about as much as 5 years from now as I knew 5 years ago. But we're committed to the effort. So we're committed to our work. We're committed to our values. We're working on visibility of the work. Letting people know that this is happening. For a long time we were very internal focused, just keep on doing the work. But now that we've seen more and more of the impact that it has on the communities, and how receptive people are to the work, and how much people need to hear kind of that good message, and that people are doing this work on their behalf, we've been trying to get that story out. And the other thing is it allows us to find other people that might be interested and valuable to our mission to become and be members. So we're growing our visibility. We're looking for partners. That's really important to us, people that share the same value, that want to commit to our organization, and that could be corporate sponsorship, corporate partners. It could be individual philanthropy. It could be Joe citizens sitting on their couch at home that I can't scuba dive, I can't traipse through the jungle, but I can support monetarily, and we'll take that, and that's as easy as pushing a button. And that kind of goes back to that, how can I have an impact on this? Well, you can, and that's what we're looking for. We're going to continue to expand our mission to more and more countries. We're going to continue to kind of build up data so we have more missions to work on, and we're going to execute the ones that we have. We are moving our mission further to the right, meaning we have been locating, identifying sites, documenting sites, and then turning all that information over to the DoD for them to execute the recovery. DoD has committed to expanding their partnership with private organizations, and so we're building out the partnership with DoD, and that is hopefully going to allow us to move into that recovery stage. So expanding even basically from beginning to end, we'll be able to be involved in the process of repatriating those MIAs.
I imagine most people collectively assume that any projects or any efforts to recover the remains and repatriate remains of our fallen and missing in action are done by the government. And I think it's really interesting that, I'm happy to hear it. I'm not trying to throw the DoD under the bus, but it does kind of suck that it's the onus now is on private organizations that are looking for funding to do it independently on their own. Because like you said, it is the promise that's ingrained in every single service member from whatever boot camp basic training, no man left behind. And if something happens, we're coming for you.
Yeah. And they're definitely putting the effort forward. Yeah. And but it's a big number. And it's a lot of work, and we're more agile than the Department of Defense in some ways, believe it or not.
Really.
And so, and so that allows us other capabilities that they might not have. And so it's not us taking the place of them. In many ways, it's us partnering with them, supporting them. And that's what we did from the very beginning, actually. We just said, you're going to continue to do your work. We're not asking for anything. We're just going to do our part, and then we're going to provide that to you. There was no official relationship. It's just, here's all the data that we discovered and created. It's yours. And then they kind of looked at it and like, well, this is pretty good stuff, you know? Yeah. And then they started executing missions, successful missions, and returning these lost service members home. And so that has been our philosophy from the beginning. Just keep on doing the work, keep on painting walls, you know, and hope for the best results. And the cool thing is, you know, we've been able to deliver on those results. The other cool thing is we've been able to scale successfully from a couple folks around the table to now a worldwide footprint that's having significant success.
So people can find out more about Project Recover, I assume, on your website.
Yep, projectrecover.org.
Okay, right on. And then I assume in your role as CEO and president, you're also available for speaking engagements?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, you can find us at projectrecover.org. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all that stuff. You can engage with us on those platforms, and you can contact us also through the website. And that's if you want to participate in a mission. You know, if you come with a enhancing skill set, that's awesome. And sometimes it might not be what you expect. You know, if you're a qualified and experienced scuba diver, that's pretty significant. But then sometimes people are like, I'm a forensic anthropologist.
Whoa.
We need that. So because you don't want me doing any digging, and that's not. We're going to have the professional people doing that. Yeah. And so we need certain expertise. And so when people show up and they have that expertise, we get really excited. And you know, it's so fulfilling. You know, you asked me the question about the veteran community that's involved in our work, and you know, you hear this conversation around purpose and the loss of that purpose when you leave the military. I never lost that because I know the impact that my work is having on the world. So that continues, and that's a big reason that veterans are attracted to my work. But it's not our work. It's not just veterans. It's you know, it's anybody that wants to participate in keeping that promise can contribute. So it's members that we're looking for, it's partners that we're looking for, and just general support.
And it's fascinating work that you and Project Recover are doing, and I'm blown away by that effort that's going into living that promise to our service members. So grateful that you were able to join us here in Boise, Idaho. I know you and Michelle are getting ready to make a move.
We are.
Yeah. So
back to the Northwest.
Yeah, you're not going to be far away in Oregon. So we look forward to having you closer, and look forward to remaining engaged and continuing to watch the work that Project Recover does, and hopefully we can become a bigger part of the work that Project Recover is executing.
Well, thank you for having me. You know, the work that you guys are doing here in Idaho is phenomenal, and it's just special to come and be a part of it and see it firsthand. And I'm always available to drive that 5 hours across Eastern Oregon and come join you for something. And you guys can drive my way too.
Yeah. No, I look forward to it. I love Bend, Oregon, and I will definitely come see you there. Man, you live our mantra of lead, learn, and inspire. You really do. You're a leader in your own right. I know you're a consummate learner. You probably read more than anyone I know, and most successful people like you do read a ton. And you inspire others with your work and the work you do as a volunteer. I know you still volunteer as an ambassador for the Travis Manion Foundation. You still do a lot of work with student veterans. You spend a lot of time on campus down at University of San Diego and other institutes of higher learning, working with the veteran student population. So, man, I commend you on everything you do. I don't know where you get the energy, but man, and you always have a smile on your face. So we appreciate you. Thanks for coming, and thanks for living our mantra of lead, learn, and inspire every day. And we challenge everyone listening to this and every one of our members to get out there and lead, learn, and inspire in their own community. So thanks a lot, Derek. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mission 43 podcast. To learn more, go to mission43.org.